I own a small building and reno company up in Brisbane, mostly focusing on restoring older character homes. My day kicks off at Sparrow's Fart. I'm constantly behind the wheel of my ute, forever covered in brick dust, sawdust, and buried in quotes, but the hard yucca brings in bloody good money. My wife, Emma, works part-time at a boutique marketing agency and spends the rest of her time doing yoga, catching up with the girls for smashed Avo brunches and styling our newly renovated place. We lived like a proper successful couple. A high, steady income, solid plans to buy an investment property down the coast, and absolutely zero screaming matches at home. I honestly believed I was providing us with the perfect life, the great Aussie dream that everyone busts their gut for. That's exactly why I never put a limit on her spending, happily paid off her shopping sprees, and encouraged her weekends away, reckoning she deserved to be comfortable while I was out sweating on job sites. I grew up in a rough housing commission suburb where most blokes I knew ended up either locked up or hitting rock bottom. My old man bailed on us when I was 10, leaving mum with 3 kids and a mountain of unpaid bills. I still remember her hands, cracked and red from cheap dish soap, and the way she'd quietly cry at the kitchen table late at night, thinking we were all asleep. That was the moment I promised myself that my future family would never know what it means to be dead broke or terrified of tomorrow. At 16, I dropped out of high school and got an apprenticeship as a chippy. I lugged bricks and timber under the blazing Queensland sun, blistered my hands to shreds, and saved every single cent I earned. While my mates were out getting plastered at the pub every weekend and blowing their cash, I was learning how to read blueprints and pour concrete. My first beat-up ute, bought straight from a scrapyard, doubled as my mobile home and office. I'd sleep in the back of it for a few hours between shifts, pulling an old jacket over me so I wouldn't have to waste fuel on the heater. Every $1,000 I banked was paid for with sweat and a blown-out back, but I stubbornly kept my eyes on the prize. When I finally got my builder's license and registered my own company, I actually shed a tear standing on the dirt of my first official job site. They were the tears of a bloke who had clawed his way out of poverty relying on absolutely nothing but his own 2 hands. I always believed a real man should be a brick wall for his woman. I wanted to lay the whole world at the feet of the woman who'd agree to share this life with me. Emma became the ultimate symbol of everything I'd fought through hell for. She seemed so delicate, graceful, and completely untouched by the harsh, gritty reality I was raised in. I happily took on all the financial weight to permanently shield her from any kind of struggle. I loved watching her breeze around our home, never having to stress about where the money for those overpriced soy candles or designer lounges came from. I was more than willing to swallow drywall dust for days on end just to see her happy smile when I walked through the door at night. Every callus on my hands felt like the price of admission for her well-being, and I paid that debt gladly. I genuinely believed I was building a fairy tale for us, a fortress where pain, betrayal, and hardship couldn't reach us. In my simple working-class mind, love was measured by absolute care, financial rock-solid stability, and total sacrifice. I never once whinged about being wrecked, even when I'd fall asleep right at the dinner table after a 15-hour shift. To me, the greatest reward was knowing my wife could afford to simply enjoy her life. I naively assumed that this kind of raw devotion and self-sacrifice would be our bulletproof vest against any storms life could throw at us. On Friday morning, Emma happily announced she was heading down to Byron Bay for a hens weekend to celebrate her best mate's birthday. We were standing in our sunlit kitchen as she finished her morning smoothie, practically glowing with excitement for the trip. "You gonna be all right here by yourself, babe?" Emma cooed, elegantly adjusting the strap of her expensive designer overnight bag. "Don't worry about me, doll. I've got a mountain of quotes for a new build to get through, so I probably won't even notice the time passing," I replied with a smile, pulling her in for a gentle hug. "I promise the girls and I will behave. Just a few margaritas on the beach and a spa day for Sarah's birthday," she chirped, looking up into my eyes with what looked like genuine affection. "Have a ripper of a time. You've been working hard lately and you've earned a good girls' weekend," I said, genuinely stoked that I could give her these carefree moments. She kissed my cheek, hopped into her brand new SUV and drove off, while I stayed behind, planning to spend a quiet weekend buried in paperwork and cost calculations. Her kiss left the scent of high-end perfume behind, and I stood in the driveway smiling as her car disappeared around the corner of our quiet suburban street. Pouring myself a strong black coffee, I spread the blueprints across the large dining table and settled into my usual routine of numbers, graphs, and building codes. Friday night passed in absolute silence. I didn't even bother texting her, so I wouldn't interrupt their girls' night out. The alarm bells started ringing on Saturday morning when an automated toll notification popped up in my inbox. It was a standard e-toll receipt from my linked account, which I'd linked to my work email ages ago to keep track of our family expenses. The toll invoice clearly stated that Emma's car had passed a gantry heading straight north up the Bruce Highway towards the Sunshine Coast, the absolute opposite direction of Byron Bay. I blinked, figuring I just hadn't had enough coffee yet, and read the fine print on my laptop screen a second time. There was zero mistake. The timestamp, the e-tag number, and the Rego matched her car perfectly. My brain, hardwired to find logical solutions on building sites, desperately tried to find an innocent explanation for this massive discrepancy. Maybe Sarah changed the venue at the last minute and booked an Airbnb up on the sunny coast? A desperate, saving thought crossed my mind. But something deep inside my gut, some primal instinct, made me tense up and put my pencil down. I immediately dialed her number just to gauge her reaction. It rang out for what felt like an agonizingly long time. And with every tone, the pulse in my temples hammered a little harder. When she finally picked up, there was soft, relaxing lounge music playing in the background, nothing like a rowdy beach pub or a group of 8 noisy women. She answered with a bright, bubbly voice and lied without skipping a beat, claiming she and the girls were literally sitting on the beach in Byron having cocktails. Hey love, how are your boring blueprints going? Her purring voice came through the speaker. Going great, babe. Just decided to take a smoko and see how you guys settled in, I said, keeping my tone as dead level as humanly possible. Oh, it's just magical here. We're sitting on the deck at a restaurant, drinking margaritas and watching the surfers. She happily confirmed her own bullshit. Really? Is Sarah happy with the present? I pressed, feeling an icy, creeping cold spreading through my chest. Oh, absolutely. She's over the moon. We're just laughing and having such a good time that I've barely even looked at my phone. Emma kept spinning her web effortlessly. There wasn't a single drop of tension in her tone. No tremor, no shadow of guilt, just a flawless, perfectly rehearsed lightness. Sounds bloody brilliant. I won't keep you from the party then, I said, gripping the edge of the kitchen bench so hard my knuckles went white. Love you, miss you heaps. See you tomorrow, she sang, blowing a loud kiss into the receiver. Love you too, I replied dryly, fighting back the urge to scream my lungs out before simply wishing her a good trip and calmly hanging up the phone. Instead of throwing a massive tantrum over the phone and launching into a barrage of accusations, I decided to handle it methodically, exactly how I tackle a messed up building project. Inside, my entire world had just caved in, like someone had brutally kicked the scaffolding out from under me, but my mind instantly flipped a switch into cold, calculated logic. I sat at the large dining table, staring blankly at my calloused, dust-covered tradie hands, feeling a sickening, sticky knot of betrayal festering in my chest. Every single cell in my body was screaming in agony, begging me to smash my phone into the drywall and tear our perfect, renovated house to pieces. But I forced myself to take a deep breath, swallowing the white-hot rage rising in my throat, because flying off the handle right now would only wreck my advantage. I needed crystal-clear clarity and ironclad proof that wouldn't leave her a single loophole for another beautiful lie. I opened the GPS tracking app on my smartphone, which we used for our family car's insurance policy, and saw that her SUV was parked at a high-end luxury resort up on the north coast. My fingers betrayed me, trembling slightly as the map zoomed in, laying bare the sheer depth of her cynical deceit. It was a premium spa retreat, the kind that costs an absolute fortune. The exact kind of money I broke my back on scaffolding to earn. Breathing became difficult, like an invisible steel hand was crushing my windpipe. Cross-referencing this with recent transactions on our joint credit card, which I had full access to, I found a booking for a couple's spa package made over a month ago. For a solid month, she had looked me dead in the eye, kissed me goodnight, and discussed our future plans, all while cold-bloodedly organising a dirty weekend away with another bloke. Realising the sheer magnitude of her hypocrisy burned me from the inside out. Worse than grabbing a piece of sun-baked corrugated iron barehanded, I felt like an absolute mug, a blind idiot who had personally funded the knife currently sticking out of his own back. There was a heavy, deafening ringing in my ears, and the blood pounded in my temples. But I forced myself to stand up from the table like a programmed machine. To eliminate any ridiculous excuses she might conjure up, I grabbed my keys, jumped into my ute, and drove the hour and a half up the Bruce Highway. That drive felt endless, easily the most terrifying and agonizing road trip of my entire life. The scenery outside blurred into a grey streak, and only one maddening thought kept looping in my head. Why the hell did she do this to me? I remembered how we picked out the premium tiles for our new bathroom, how we laughed in the kitchen on Sunday mornings, and every single one of those warm memories now felt like a cheap, filthy stage play. I gripped the steering wheel with such primal force that my forearms cramped, desperately trying to use physical pain to drown out the emotional agony. Pulling into a spot near the resort, I sat in the ute for a long time, physically unable to force myself to get out, terrified of what I was about to see with my own two eyes. But there was no backing down. I had to drink this poison right to the dregs to free myself from her illusions forever. Leaving the ute in the car park, I walked up to the edge of the hotel restaurant and personally photographed her on the open deck. She was sitting there, wrapped in the arms of her ex-colleague, laughing happily. I stood hidden in the shadows of the palm trees, feeling like a stranger crashing my own life, watching another bloke's hands run through her hair. She was wearing the light summer dress I bought her for our anniversary, and the sight of it almost made me dry heave right there on the manicured lawn. She looked at him with the exact same glowing, love-struck eyes she used to reserve for me, and that look was the final nail in the coffin. My heart felt like it had shattered into 1,000 jagged, razor-sharp shards, ripping my chest apart with every breath. In that fleeting moment, all my massive love, my blind devotion, and my willingness to move mountains for her turned to freezing, dead ash. I pulled out my phone, feeling like a ruthless executioner preparing to carry out the death sentence on our marriage. The screen focused perfectly on their happy, relaxed faces, and I methodically tapped the shutter button several times in a row. Every quiet click of the camera echoed in my skull like a deafening gunshot at point-blank range, killing off the last pathetic scraps of my hope. My eyes burned with unshed tears of pure betrayal, but I clenched my jaw so hard I nearly cracked a tooth from the tension. I had my evidence bulletproof and undeniable, which had permanently leveled my cozy, comfortable world to the ground. Throwing one last look at the woman I had lived and breathed for, I felt nothing but a gaping, pitch-black void. I had no more business at this circus. My role in this absurd theater was officially over. After securing a few crystal-clear shots on my phone, I turned around completely unnoticed, walked back to my ute, and drove home in dead silence. Emma returned on Sunday evening, dramatically sighing from the moment she walked through the door about how completely wrecked she was from her loud mates and the long drive up from the south. She tossed her keys on the hallway console and stretched with a fake smile, leaning in to kiss me while chirping about how much she missed me. I silently took a step back, dodging her like she had the plague, refusing to let her lips touch my cheek. Her smile instantly slid off her face, replaced by a mask of genuine confusion and mild irritation. "Did something happen at work, babe?" she asked in that exact same innocent tone that now made me physically sick to my stomach. I didn't say a word. I just silently pointed towards the cold, brightly lit living room. A little surprise was waiting for her in there. Her bags, neatly packed with all her belongings and spread out across the kitchen island, were the printed linked toll invoices, the credit card statements, and those high-res photos from the resort. She took a few hesitant steps, and the silence in the house grew so thick it was deafening. Her eyes darted across the neat piles of paper, finally locking onto the glossy color prints from the restaurant deck. The second it registered, all the color drained from her face. She instantly tried to flip the switch into victim mode and started stammering out a pathetic string of excuses. A choked, miserable squeak escaped her throat, sounding exactly like an animal caught in a trap. "It's not what you think. We just randomly bumped into each other up there, I swear," she blurted out, grabbing her head with shaking hands. Huge crocodile tears started rolling down her cheeks. The very same tears that used to make me want to move heaven and earth just to see her smile again. But right now, I watched this hysterical meltdown with absolute ice-cold indifference, like I was watching a cheap soap opera. All her previous arrogance, confidence, and polished glamour evaporated the exact second she realized her luxury fairy tale was officially over. She lunged at me, trying to grab my hands and begging me to just listen, to give her one tiny chance to fix everything. I ruthlessly cut off her monologue, informing her that first thing tomorrow morning, I was permanently revoking her access to my business accounts and cancelling every single credit card in her name. I watched with pure satisfaction as the sheer panic of impending poverty reflected in her wide, terrified eyes. To her, losing my money and the status that came with it was far more terrifying than actually losing me. And that was the absolute final nail in the coffin of our marriage. I coldly escorted her out the front door along with her bags, reminding her that according to our binding financial agreement, this house was an asset owned solely by my construction company. She stood on the front porch, expensive makeup running down her face in dark streaks, completely unable to comprehend that the bloke who had carried her on a pedestal for years was capable of such ruthless boundaries. I simply slammed the heavy front door right in her tear-stained face, permanently locking her out of my life. She's going to have to fund her own luxury coastal retreats and find a new place to rent now, because her free ride on my dime is officially cancelled. Standing alone in the quiet of my empty house, I poured myself a stiff glass of whiskey and, for the first time in a long time, felt how heavy but incredibly freeing it was to breathe without that treacherous dead weight around my neck. I'll build my empire back up from scratch, but this time, without the fake scenery and the leeches standing behind my back. If you enjoyed this story of hard-earned justice and karma, make sure you hit subscribe, drop a like, and leave a comment down below. We've got plenty more raw, true life stories just like this coming your way.